So for those who don't know me, my name is James Webb. I'm a director at Elizabeth Norman International. I spent the last 11 years dedicating my career really to recruitment within insight, analytics, research, and more recently, market intelligence. Some of you might have seen we're running a series on our website and LinkedIn called Insight Expertise, where we speak to a range of different experts on their career and how they got there, where they see the things going in the future, and just generally want to promote their area of the business as much as we can. So we've had UX people, client-side people, data analysts, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by Chris.mcIntyre-brown, who's the MD of a company called Futuresource Consulting, who are actually one of our clients and are a market intelligence kind of specialist. So thank you, Chris. Do you want to just give us a quick intro to yourself, Chris? Obviously, kind of introduce a little bit, but you're the MD of Futuresource. Be good to hear a bit more about you, your career, and what you guys do, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Futuresource is a strategic research consultancy, and we specialize in the tech sector. So obviously that's pretty broad. So the kind of key areas we look at are content, digitalization of content, entertainment content. It's a little bit broader than that, the distribution of that, and then the kind of end devices that they play out on and solutions that are part of that bigger ecosystem. So we've got an amazing client base, quite literally the who's who of tech. We are 34 years now, I think, in business. I always get that slightly wrong because we've morphed through various kind of M&A activities. And we are just shy of 100 staff in terms of headcount, so kind of mid-sized business. For me personally, I've been with the business 18 years now, so long time. My background in terms of education was kind of business management route, undergrad, and then like a lot of people, I suppose, that take business management, I wasn't really sure where that would take me. So I went on and did a master's in marketing because that kind of caught my attention and had a bit of passion for that, and then was working in the city as part of a marketing consultancy for a few years. Wasn't particularly for me on the creative side. I was much more about the planning and the strategy side of things. So left there and joined what was then a business called DTC, which sort of 5 or 6 years later then merged with another company called Understanding and Solutions in the UK to form Futuresource. So my background through the company was quite literally from junior analyst through to then running a small team, through to a larger team, through to then heading up kind of half the business, which was our B2B business, so B2B electronics. And about 6 or 7 months ago now, I took the reins in charge as MD, which is quite challenging, very much a different kind of skill set. So absolutely learning every day what it is to be an MD and to run a company. So it's exciting. Yeah, it's an exciting spot to be in, and the business is in good shape. We've also had some challenges. I think if you look at the tech sector generally, it kind of had its boom years through the pandemic. Ironically, it was almost like an inverse of what the rest of the world was seeing, because lots of people were at home and looking to buy tech, and obviously then a lot of businesses scrambling to figure out how they could service a remote workforce. So the sort of lion's share of client base boomed through that period, and now are trying to kind of catch back up because the market's slowed down. So it's there's lots of challenges out there, but again, where there's confusion, companies like us, particularly research analyst companies, hopefully come in and try to solve some of those problems and answer those burning questions. So we definitely see a change in spending patterns in the way that research is being acquired, and the types of research, and much more of a focus on customized bespoke engagements, because a lot of our clients want to use their research budgets more wisely, or what's left of their research budgets. So that's a challenge for us as well. But generally, it's an exciting time. And as a business, I know we're going to touch on this later on, but as a business, we've been through a huge amount through the pandemic, as well as I'm sure a lot of your other customers and people that are listening to this would have been through too. And that's both exciting and slightly terrifying in the way it changes the shape of your workforce and your business. So we're still trying to navigate all of that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's quite cracked it just yet. It's still very new, isn't it, to everyone? So we're still learning every day, every week of how we should work best together and hybrid and offices. And again, that's changing. You hear in the news as well recently about companies, enforcing back to the office and things like this. So it's a very dynamic kind of thing at the moment, and I don't think anyone's quite
It is.
sussed it just yet.
Yeah, and one of our business practices looks at the collaboration space, which takes in hybrid working. We've got a big focus on that. So from a consulting research perspective, we keep a really keen eye on that space in terms of the technologies which are being deployed for remote hybrid workforces. So we kind of have all the research there. We understand return to work. We understand how businesses are trying to deal with that from a technology deployment perspective, and we try to then look at that in our business. And we were pre-pandemic 5 days in the office. If you couldn't be in the office, we were reluctant to recruit. So our recruitment pool was shallower. We were very close to London deliberately. So St Albans we're based. So we found quite a lot of success attracting people out of London, but still it was quite limiting, particularly as a global company that produces global research. We then relied on a lot of external partners, which was very successful. That model worked, but it was in terms of attracting permanent staff, it was quite limiting, but it worked. And now, kind of overnight, we moved to a fully remote model, and we changed actually a lot of our contracts for new staff that were coming in to be fully remote. And that's been successful in so much as I think we're in a period where a lot of our not necessarily our clients, but our competitors are trying to bring staff back to the office. And so it's quite a USP for us to be able to offer fully remote working, but that in itself brings cultural challenges, I think, in how you try and create some sense of culture and sort of keep the business ticking along. So I definitely wouldn't say we've cracked that at all. We're trying different initiatives and ways to do that, but we certainly haven't cracked that. But conversely, the thing that it does offer us then is the theoretical opportunity to access a global talent pool. And the reason I say theoretical is because where do you start, right? And what are your motivations behind doing that? And I think this is where a lot of companies are sort of struggling. Are you going for a sort of particular skill set in a particular geography, whatever that might be? Maybe there's some programming skills in a particular country, or there's some sales skills in another, or whatever it might be. Are you looking at that from a cost perspective? Are you trying to sort of lower your cost base? There's lots of different motivations behind it. And then practically, how do you go out and do that if you don't have an entity in those countries? Then you start getting into kind of employment law and tax, payroll, all those types of providers out there that can support you with that. But that obviously comes with the cost. So it's one of the kind of bigger points we've been looking at in this last year is how do we truly tap into that? And there are lots and lots of different ways. I know you guys have international services and are expanding that internationally, but there are lots of ways to do it. But there's that constant thing, particularly for me and my seat, of we should be looking to access that global talent pool, but there are a lot of challenges kind of around doing that as well.
Yeah, as you say, we discussed it as well, that it can get quite complicated around payroll, tax, laws of the different countries, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can get into some problems with that. But as you say, there are now suppliers out there that can help with that and enable us to have people in different countries and employed through them and things like that. So, but then again,
incredible opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
Just talk across you for a second, but incredible opportunities. So if you think for us as a business, the tech sector, there are some concentrations of clients. That could be US based, Silicon Valley, that could be China, Korea, Taiwan, and there are other centers globally where there's a concentration of clients for us. So if we could be closer to those clients, and we'll talk about what we look for in staff and what how we approach our clients, but being front and center and in front of them is absolutely imperative for our business. We're not a kind of sell a report and walk away company. That's not what we do. So if we're able to recruit not just a skill set, but a proximity to a client base, that's also really, really attractive. So there are a lot of motivations for us as a business, and that's quite specific to us. I'm sure your other clients will have different kind of goals and objectives, but for us, that's one that ticks another box in terms of being closer to those clients.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think, the pandemic has shifted that kind of outlook, and perhaps before we weren't so open-minded to that as a possibility. And now with how working models change, it seems more achievable. And there are now suppliers that have set up programs and software to help sort of run those sorts of things. I guess that then does come under the challenge as well of kind of the culture and collaboration and having a one sort of team view. If you have got people dotted around in other offices around the world, and that's also going to be potentially a challenge, right? So,
well, I'll give you a great example of that. We've so one of the things that we've and it's a buzzword, but it's more than that now. Obviously, the AI trend, and there are lots of ways that could manifest itself in our business, from areas of kind of research and analysis, but also just how we might implement and leverage some of those tools. That kind of disrupt or be disruptive mentality. And we are really trying to push into that. And we for example, we have a workshop coming up, a sort of on-site day workshop coming up next month. And what do we do with that? We can bring our UK-based staff in. Equally, they've become more disparate in nature. They're more scattered across the UK because they've gone back to their where they grew up, or they've gone to the coast, or whatever else they've gone to do to sort of deal with their personal lives. And so even to bring all of those people to one central location now, that attracts quite big costs. But then we've also a large team in India, and we have a number of staff kind of scattered across Europe and across the world now. So how do we deal with that? Then we've got to start thinking about streaming, and does the workshop really work in that environment? And are those people that are remote going to get the best out of that experience, et cetera, right? So all those sorts of challenges come up.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's such a bank tap, isn't it? Because getting people in to discuss it and share ideas and be there in person is so valuable. But then, as you say, the cost and the time traveling, getting people together, and the fact that it's so easy just to jump on a call like this, right? It takes a few seconds, and I'm there with you, kind of thing. So, it's a tough one. Well, I mean, actually, we were the same kind of pre-pandemic. It was very much office 5 days a week, and that was just the done thing. And if you've got a doctor or dentist, then sure. But other than that, it'd be very rare that we'd work at home. And now we also had to sort of pivot overnight and go fully remote. And now, where we are now, we work in the office twice a week, which works well for us. And it's a set days each week, so we know when we're going to be in, and the team kind of come in and things like that. But you guys are much bigger, and as you say, all spread over the country, so it's very hard to. Well, it works for you guys, but what works for us is different. So it's very unique.
And it needs really careful thought. And you say we're bigger. We are obviously bigger than you, but we're not big. So when you start thinking about really properly building a remote culture, and all of the effort that goes in around that from an HR perspective and from an employee engagement perspective, and a lot of those employees are. They work incredibly hard in this business. It's a tough job being an analyst, full stop anywhere. You're always at the beck and call of your clients, and it's very much a client first culture. So they're generally maxed. So then trying to engage in things which feel like they're on the periphery of your core job, you naturally meet some resistance to that. So there's a lot going on there. Which makes it difficult. But on the flip side, as we've just said, the opportunities that it gives us to really access global talent anywhere, anytime, if you can get that bit right and you can find the right partners that allow you to do that, then the upside is potentially phenomenal. So you've got to be on it, got to be looking at it. It's just recognizing it creates challenges.
And actually, in the UK, as you say, it is a USP that you're fully remote. I know you have the office there, and you can go in and things like that if you want to. But when we've hired people for you, the fact that it is fully remote is definitely really attractive to people. And we've got a few clients like that, and it works really well, and they've grown quite quickly. So I think insisting on certain days is not maybe the way to go for some companies, but It's been
also
helpful for us.
Yeah, and it's also it comes down to the function you're recruiting into, the job role you're looking at, the seniority. I mean, these are all things that we've learned over time. There's this thing about grads. A lot of our business was built on grads historically, and that's always worked really, really well. And you accept there's a kind of natural churn, but we've had so many success stories, with people sticking around and doing a fantastic job. The problem I think now that we have is, and where remote working is immediately working, is when you're bringing in staff that are just a little bit more seasoned. They've been there, they've done it, their expectations are slightly different, and they settle in really, really well. And it's not to say that grads aren't either, because I think now they're coming out not knowing anything different. But in our role, which is, knowledge is king always, and how you impart that knowledge and that best practice to very junior staff who sometimes don't understand how to prioritize an inbox or what's expected in how you communicate with the client. Just the soft skills which go around being an analyst, which you hear naturally when you're in a buzzy office. You've got your managers and your team around you. That definitely is missing. So I think remote working it suits a more senior role, certainly in terms of analyst. But maybe on the creative side less so. So it really depends what function of business you're recruiting into.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it also depends on the person, right? Like some people just don't like being at home and working on their own, or if they have children, they need to be at home because of the school runs and things like that. So it really is kind of case by case. But yeah, certainly a good point that graduates kind of coming through, like that osmosis of learning is in the past exactly quite important.
Exactly
So again, how do you get
right.
that right for kind of people coming through now? So and what sort of things do you guys do as a team then to have the kind of collaboration? You mentioned about the workshop, but do you do, I know, going back to COVID times, we were doing quizzes and things like that. Like, what do you guys do to kind of have that sort of team?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of gone. Like, when you think about when we first went into the pandemic, there was so many quizzes and various team social events and all that kind of stuff. Frankly, that has sort of died off now, because we're just all much more used to doing that. So we have a fairly strict sort of set of guidelines in the way that we manage our teams and sub teams. So that would be a minimum of two sort of big team meets a week, where you're having your catch ups, and then one-to-one with your direct reports once a fortnight minimum. The reality is it happens much more than that. Some sub teams have their own social events. Like say, we try and come into the office on a Wednesday. That's encouraged to be a destination day. People engage with that, or they don't. We have a summer event. We have a Christmas event. Similar stuff that we used to do, honestly. And then we do try to get the big functional areas together a couple of times a year. So that might be the whole sales team come in for a session, or the production team, or whatever that is. But there's nothing I would say, and again, this is where we are sort of looking at for 2024 and trying to look at the culture and the way that we build some of that back up. I wouldn't say we're particularly brilliant at all those little bits that go alongside that kind of build that culture up. Obviously, we talk a lot more about values and beliefs and purposes and things like that, and we try to reiterate a lot of that through the business. But in comparison to some of my peers and companies that we work with that have some really quite big HR teams, they've got some brilliant initiatives that they run, which I'd love us to do. But the reality is it's just regular contact touch points that filter through the business. That's the way that we try to do it.
Okay. Well, what sort of things have you heard other people doing? If you can share broad, mention that then some clients do some good things. What sort of things do they do?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's either it tends to be more sub team stuff, but again, like one of the things we're looking at next year is charity days, right? Giving up some of our time for charity, which gets the teams together. But no, I just think they're more kind of innovative in. I've had things like blind dates, which sounds awful, right? Depending on what your character's like, but it's you join for 10 minutes and you are connected with someone else in the business, and you just have a chat for 10 minutes, and you move on. And things like that, where you don't quite know what you're going to get, but that means that you're talking to other people across the business that aren't your day-to-day team. Because the reality of it is, for our business, you're probably in a team of 5 or 6, and they're the people you see week in, week out. You might talk to marketing and sales when they come in and support, right? But you're talking to the same few. So if you have that kind of blind date type idea, that's kind of a good one. I still think all the quizzes and all those types of things tend to happen, but they're a lot more structured. We hear a lot of companies that have these kind of thematic ideas where HR is working really hard, almost as they should do, dealing with your staff as almost like an internal client, right? So how do we market to them? How do we get them engaged with the campaigns that we're running and the things we're trying to do with them? So it's that type of behaviour, I think, that I think everyone could just do better.
Yeah, no, that sounds nice ideas actually. I like some of those. Just going back to your role as it stands today. So you mentioned about your background and progression, and I guess that's really inspiring to people in the business and also externally, that you've kind of come through the ranks. I mean, when you sort of started, did you have the ambition to become an MD? Like, were you just sort of happy to go along with things? How did it kind of all come about?
Good question. Yes, to a point. I was, quite an ambitious guy to a point. I always saw being an MD as the kind of pinnacle of a career. Actually, now I'm sat in this role, I realise that that's possibly not the case. I think you can be very, very successful in a particular role that doesn't have to be as isolating, and I'll come back to that point in a second, as being an MD. It's a very, very different set of skills. And if you think about my career to date, it was on the product side as an analyst. And as I went through the ranks in that, I really found that I enjoyed the sort of client visits, the conference room sort of presentations, the big conference presentations. That's the bit where I kind of came alive. And if you look at what I think it is to be an analyst, when you come in, you're just learning a market. You're trying to figure out how that market works and be credible enough to talk to a client and seed them with a few insights in what's happening in the market. And then your next stage is then to start understanding the clients themselves and the dynamics of their businesses and how they work and how they operate and where the gaps are in their product ranges, for example. And you start to try and link some of that back to the market knowledge that you have. And then as you get further through and you become a bit braver, then you're advising the clients, depending on the client and whether they want to hear it or not. You're trying to give them direction on where you think they should be going. And that for me is really intoxicating. I love that part of the job. As you step out of that and into the MD role, then it's much more operational, right? And that's kind of an obvious thing to say, but I think until you sit in that seat, you don't really entirely understand that. And that's a challenge. It's quite a big mental shift, because I no longer do those pieces that I used to do and I used to love. So as much as it's the pinnacle of the company, it just presents very different challenges. We've got a board that I have to report to. You're much more on the operational side, and yes, there's a visionary aspect to the role, where obviously you have the opportunity to shape the direction of the business, but at the same time, it's very, very operational. You're trying to make sure all the different functions are ticking along. Definitely keeps me awake at night more than my old job did, because so much depends on you and your leadership, and all of the other leaders in the business. Right? I'm certainly not arrogant enough to think it all sits with me by any stretch, but you feel the pressure of that, which is fine. But it's just a very different set of skills and a very different set of expectations than where I was previously, and I'm loving it. I'm learning every day, and it's given me the skills and the knowledge that I absolutely didn't have before. It's just a very, very different role. So yes, rounding back to your original question, yes, I did always want to be here, but that was almost an aspirational thing without necessarily understanding what it means to be sat in the role. And the outgoing CEO, when I had a call with her, her parting comment was, careful what you wish for. And there's definitely an element for that. I see why that was said. But no, it's great. I love the business. I love the business. 18 years in it. We owe so much to people that have been and gone before, from the sort of founder owners to various colleagues that have sort of built the business up and moved it forward. So I feel a weight of responsibility to kind of keep on pushing that on. So it's not. It's more than just the role for me, I guess, which is possibly, it's more unique, I think, when you find someone that isn't a founder owner. But we have staff in the business that are 20, 30 years with us, and that's not exceptional. There are a few. So it's it's steeped in history. I think we all feel that responsibility to make it work, and we will, and we are. But it's not necessarily what I entirely expected.
Okay, that's really interesting. But you always wanted to get there, but you're now there, and it's not maybe what you thought it would be like. But as you say, you're still enjoying it and learning. But it's interesting.
But in a good way. In a good way. You realise that you give up some things and you gain others, right? And it's all about experience, isn't it? And you have to learn things. They don't just come to you naturally. You've got to do the hard yards. The reason why I became a confident and comfortable principal analyst and leader of a team is because I had years and years of experience building into it. So it will be similar in this role. But no, it's great. I love it, and I love the company.
Well, yeah, clearly, if you've been there for so long, like you must love it to have been there for so long. So, okay, no, thank you for that. Yeah, it's really, really interesting to hear your view on that. When it comes to hiring analysts and researchers for Futuresource, what do you tend to look for in terms of the skill set, but also about the person and kind of cultural kind of aspects?
Well, I'll actually, I think our 5 company values answer that, but I'll come back to those in a second, because it's kind of important to understand our particular business model, which is front and center about the customer and the client and being close to the client. So if you think about the analyst umbrella, and bearing in mind we're market analysts, we're not financial analysts, but if you think about analysts generally, there is this kind of preconception. It's not always a misconception, but a preconception that analysts are, sit in a box, never get their head up, just produce lots of reports, and that's it. Kind of, very, very, for want of a better word, kind of very, very geeky. And there's nothing wrong with that. But don't have any kind of outward facing skill sets. And for us, that's not really the case. And because we are a relatively mid-sized analyst company, but mid to small, our analysts need to be able to get to a point where they are really doing everything from researching to analysis to report writing to presenting. And if you were to go to one of the, and there are only a few really, but the much bigger analyst companies, you will kind of have those functions broken down. So you will have a primary research team, you have a forecasting team, you have an analysis team, and then that all kind of comes together at the end. So that's not us. So what we try to do is build analysts that will eventually be able to run the whole process, and most importantly, to be in front of clients and presenting this back. But also, if you think about the other end of that piece, they need to be able to conduct primary research. And so that for us isn't necessarily cold calling, although we have elements of that, but we have partners that sometimes do those mass scale surveys for us. That is building and maintaining a network of high quality contacts up and down the supply chains that they operate in. So to be able to do that, you've got to have a particular skill set. You've got to be able to communicate well with people. You've got to connect with people, and you've got to be able to earn their trust and their respect, most importantly, and be confident that you can go back to them to talk about whatever the issue is you're trying to research and understand, and that they will have that trust in you, that they will be willing to communicate with you. So that sort of fundamental skill set, I suppose, is communication. It's a given it's a given that people come to us that are educated, they've got a degree, they are bright people that come to our business and our competitors, right? It's the same for all of us. You need credible, bright people that have good ideas. But for us, we place quite a big emphasis on communication skills. And honestly, a lot of that is feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is, you get someone in a meeting room, you just get a feel for people, and we definitely don't get it wrong, or right all the time. But you do tend to get a good feel for people in terms of the way that they communicate, because their CVs are all pretty similar. We tend to look for a kind of business marketing, economics background. They tend to be the sort of three areas we look at. They're all well educated, they've all been to good universities, etc., etc. So that kind of communication skill is really vital for us. But then going back to our values, it sometimes seems a bit cliche to talk about those, but they're deliberately designed to talk about us as a business. So the first of those is collaboration. It's everything to us. We work in teams. We don't work in silos. We have teams of people working on projects. So that kind of collaborative feel, that ideation, sharing ideas, pushing us forward is incredibly important. Curiosity is another one. You've got to be curious as an analyst. You've got to want to be interested in things and learning. And that for us is the why part. Like any analyst, anywhere, it's why. Why is the market behaving like that? Why is a client doing what they're doing? Why is a customer doing that? Why do we think a market's going to behave like that in the future? So it's always why.
Mm-hmm.
So that curiosity point is obviously fundamental. Customer centric, that's our big one in the middle of those five. Like I said, it's all about account management. It's all about customer service. It's all about staying close to the customers and giving them the best experience we possibly can. So again, we're not a company that sells reports. You can't come onto our website and buy a report, kind of transactional feel.
Okay.
We are all about obviously selling research, but getting as close to the customers as we can and supporting them however we can with their business, right? So when we win customers, we tend to keep them and we tend to grow accounts because of that, because they're always involved in something else. They always need different types of research. So for us, our research can either be kind of market insights, it can be customer insights, and it can be all that can be underpinned by different types of methodologies, but we do a lot of end user work in there. So understanding what your customers are thinking, and that could be channel or it could be end user, or we're looking at how the market is behaving. So there's always things to talk to our clients about, and being close to them, be that through the sales team or the analyst team, is vital. Entrepreneurship is another one, and that for me, that's probably my biggest one, because that was something as a business I was always given, that autonomy to go and grow teams, to be investing in them, to a point, small company, but it's very much encouraged that if you've got ideas, go for them and see what happens. Better to fail quickly and try than not at all, right? So, so that's very much the mantra. And then the final one is respect, and it's one of those ones that, in fact, I was presenting this to the company, some of these yesterday, and respect, trust, all those things you sort of take as a given. Trust for me is one that if you say one of your values is trust, then you're not trustworthy, right? It should be a given. And almost respect is the same, but respect's really, really important, and it works not just for the way we deal with our clients, the way we interact with them, how quickly we get back to them, all that kind of service layer, but also internally with each other. It's vital for us. So those sort of five values, I think, kind of summarize who we are and what we look for in people. But like I say, the number one skill, after the fact that they're bright, people have got good backgrounds, and they're intelligent people, is how well they communicate.
Okay. That's really interesting. I think it's really important to have values and have a company, have a shared vision and things that you work towards and also recruit against. We've seen quite a few companies sort of starting to do that more so now, and be more open on people's backgrounds and hire against values, which I think is an interesting way of doing things. But yeah, having them in the first place and being able to explain them, and it's a really, really good starting point. So it's good that they're so important to you guys. So
yeah, massive. And the other thing, honestly, is I remember when I was a grad and I was just starting to try and look for jobs, and we always used to hear this thing of people make their minds up in the first 5 minutes of an interview, and I still think there's a lot of truth to that. That's definitely, I've interviewed probably thousands of people now across my career, and there are definitely examples of when people turn you around and you think, the beginning, and then they turn you around, and we're always really, really keen to not do that 5 minute judge, but we do have this thing called the dinner test, right? Which is, if you were sat next to this person at dinner for a client do, or whatever else, and we do a lot of those, we're invited to various client dinners and whatever else, would you be happy? Would that person have some chat? Would they be able to hold a conversation with you? And that is, again, is so important, and we quite often talk about that as a way of gauging people. Right at the end of it, it's like, right, the dinner test. Would you? Yeah, probably would.
Okay.
No. It's all the same thing. It's all about how you come across. It's how well you communicate, how well you look someone in the eye, all that kind of stuff. How interesting you are outside of your career and your academia, right? Because whenever you're with clients, it very quickly gets onto other things than work. So yeah, it's kind of another test.
I think people buy from people still, right? So if you're not going to get on with the employee or the client or whatever, then there's still a job they can do, but you want to be so entrenched in their business, as you say, customer focused. So I think that's an important thing, and makes total sense to me. You mentioned about you're running an AI workshop, and obviously there's a lot of talk about AI at the moment. Some people are really excited by it, some people terrified. Like, how do you see things affecting your business in terms of how you do things, approaches? What do you see? Are you excited? Are you scared? Are you sorry?
How long have we got? How long have we got? I am. Where am I sat with it all? I think I used the phrase earlier on, disrupt or be disrupted. I don't think there is a place for any business that isn't looking at AI in one way or another. I think there's a lot of hype. A thing called the Gartner hype curve, and I don't know whether you've ever come across it. I suppose Gartner's a competitor of ours, but it's a good one, which is you always get this big hype curve, and then the market dips back down again and it picks back up, right? Yeah, we're definitely in a period of that. But I think a lot of that, it is hyped, but also if you just scratch below the surface a little bit, the pace of acceleration is just phenomenal. What's going on in that space is phenomenal and terrifying. And the reason that we're running this workshop is it is just it's a knowledge raiser. It's a wrong word. Like, no, we're trying to sort of raise the skill set and the knowledge of the staff, just to get them to a point of sort of demystifying it a little bit. And some of them, by the way, are great, and they're already using it. And actually, our challenges in that is we've had to put boundaries around our terms and conditions, in our contracts, in our staff handbook, because we've got a lot of quite sensitive IP in the business, and we absolutely don't want to be putting that out into public AI engines. And again, that will evolve to a point where you have your own, almost like, do you remember the cloud, the early days of cloud? We will eventually have our own internal tools where we can feed our own research and analysis into it. But I suppose where we started off looking at it was just, what is it? Like, how do we break it down? And do we see this as something we should be investing in from research? So we're actually putting out reports on it, and how does that work? Is it something we should be investing in from an internal perspective, that we can build those efficiencies into the company and we can start to do different things with it? Kind of, what does it look like? And as I've been to quite a few workshops now and sessions with various people, the main thing I kind of come across is no one's got a clue where it's going. Don't plan for it, because there's just no point in planning for it. But be on that train. So I think it will it disrupt the market research community? Yes, to a point. What it's done for us, and certainly the people that we would call competitors, because the market research industry has a huge gamut of different qualities of companies, and I think what it will do is it will put a lot of pressure on that low end market research business where there's not a lot of primary going into it. It's kind of a lot of desk type research, and it's still valid. It's market research. You go out and you search around the web and you find out whatever you do, and you put a report together, and you read them. They're not great, but you can see why some companies would buy into them because they're cheap and it gives them at least a steer, right? But I think that business model will become increasingly challenged unless those companies are getting on the AI sort of wave early and they are replacing a lot of the kind of headcount that would produce those reports, which I could see. But I think that low end of the industry becomes really challenged. For us, it just makes you sharpen your USPs a little bit. It makes you think about, well, who are we and why are we here and why do people do business with us? And for us, it's the value of our networks, it's the insights that we get, it's the primary work that we do. You can't get that through the internet. You just can't. So it's good for us in a sense, because again, when we think about our communication and the way that we talk about our business, it's really sharpened some of that up. But I think then in terms of the way that we use it as a business, I don't really have all the answers, right? I think it will fundamentally change the way our marketing behaves and works. We're doing a lot of work. We're looking a lot at generative AI, and I think there's some fascinating things around that. And you sort of build the AI piece with automation, and I think you become. It's really, really powerful. I think for our research team, it's a support piece at the moment, but really where we're trying to get everyone to is understand what it is. That's what this workshop's about. Understand what it is. And again, some of our staff are using it, right? But understand what it is, do the basics of understanding that. Here are a set of curated tools that will allow you to get started and go and play around with it. And then we'll come back and we'll think about, okay, well, what does that mean for our business? What's worked well? What hasn't worked well? And we'll redefine and we'll go again. And then we'll try and bring the laggards along with us and try and get them upskilled, because we'll give them very specific use cases. And we'll just try and get the whole company up to a point where it's not a terrifying thing and we're using it and we are more efficient. I see it being more about efficiency than anything kind of life-changing at this moment. But for me, I've got I use one called Claude, but you got ChatGPT, whatever else. These are such obvious ones. There's tons of other models and tools out there that are being developed, but I have that open pretty much constantly, and I use it daily, right? For whatever else, not just for work. I've got a 13-year-old son who had a science test the other day, and I asked for 20 questions and answers for a year eight. Boy or girl, but for a year 8 student on this topic, and away we went, right? And it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I think there's just a load of ways that it can be used. I don't think anyone's got a clue how it will go, but if you're not on it, then it's going to be a problem for you, and you will start to look very out of date very quickly, and then the cost of doing business, which is the main concern for me, becomes more and more expensive because someone out there is disrupting and doing it better than you are for half the price. And that's got to be a motivation to get everyone to a point of trying it out and start to work with it. So that's where we're at with it. We're right at the beginning. We have a set of objectives for the next 3 years, and AI is one of those. So that tells you how seriously we're sort of taking it.
I haven't heard of Claude, actually. I use Bard, which is like Google's version of ChatGPT. I thought you were going to say you sort of passed off your knowledge, but actually it was ChatGPT on the science test. But you use it for questions rather than pretending to know your stuff. Not at all. But it's a silly thing, isn't it? But there's just so many as you get into it. I don't want to talk too openly about how I've been using it, because there have just been some brilliant ones for me where I had something to do that would have really taken me to sit down, and obviously my time's really pressured. It would have taken me maybe half an hour to really sit and think and draft something and get it right. And within 3 questions, I got a block of text, which I still had to alter slightly here and there to make it feel like me. But it was like, wow, that's it. So I've done that in 5 minutes. So that's 25 minutes I've got back.
that I would have had to have invested in, in drafting that particular document.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. What you're saying about no one quite knows how it's really going to play out just yet, and it's changing so rapidly. But I think you're right about getting on the train now and disrupt or be disrupted. I think that's definitely how I feel about it as well. So that's been really helpful, Chris, and really interesting and insightful to hear your views and background and career and stuff. So yeah, really appreciate that. If there's anyone out there that's listening that wants to chat to you about your services, or maybe is looking for a job, obviously we're here too. But are you okay if people kind of reach out to you? Like, what's the best way to
for
get
sure.
in touch with you?
Yeah, I'd love that. Look, this wasn't done anything as cynically as driving business or trying to recruit, or just trying to help you out a little bit. But no, please do. We're always looking for talent, and we're always looking to talk to potential clients and support them. So yeah, anything like that, please feel free to reach out. I assume you'll put my details in.
Of course, we'll put that in the description and whatnot. So yeah, that'll be in there. So that's been amazing. Thank you.